Hello, everybody, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Equipped, Bruised, and Tired Podcast. My name is Bryce Krawchuk, and I'm here with Ryan Stinn. And today we're going to do a little bit of an introductory episode and talk a bit about why we are here, why we're talking to you guys, and what we have to say. We're hoping to have some awesome guests, a few of whom are already lined up. But for today, we're just going to kind of dive into things, give a bit of an expose on the two of us and why we might be interested in hosting an Equipped powerlifting podcast and why you might be interested in listening to it. So to start off with, obviously we're in a bit of an unprecedented situation with a lot of training. I know Ryan and I spoke last week, probably not a lot of Equipped training going on in a lot of the basement gyms and stuff like that. So I guess before we even get into that, Ryan, maybe just give us a little bit about yourself and a brief introduction and sort of some of your maybe some of your accolades in lifting.
Sure. Yeah. Accolades sounds pretty fancy, but I started lifting back in 2005. That was my first powerlifting meet. I actually started lifting at a gym like maybe 2 years before that, and kind of started getting into powerlifting in 2004. We kind of met up with Jeff Butt and Rhea Fowler at the time, now my wife, Rhea Stinn, Ryan Fowler. They had a small crew that trained together at the gym we were at, and my buddy started powerlifting, or my buddy bought an Inzer Blast bench shirt, and if anyone actually knows what that is, I feel bad for you, but so he bought this shirt and kind of forced me to put it on him, and then eventually he benched 315 with his shirt on, and he was so pumped about it because he was about 80 kilos at the time. And Ryan Fowler walks by at this public gym and goes, "Wouldn't have counted in a meet." And that was basically like our introduction to Ryan Fowler. So,
There you go.
So that's how we kind of started in it. In 2005, I did my first meet. It was actually a Western Canadians, because back then you could just do Westerns for your first meet.
Yeah.
And powerlifting was equipped back then, right? So the introduction to it was lifting in gear. I did my first meet with a squat suit, knee wraps, bench shirt, and then I deadlifted completely raw. Didn't even wear a belt back then because I didn't think I'd get in a good position with a belt. So 2005 I started, and then 2008 was my first international meet. I competed in Newfoundland at Open Worlds, and placed, I don't even know, I think 6th there. No, probably lower than that. No, it might have been 6th. There was quite a few notable bomb outs that year at Open World. So, and then I've competed, I want to say, maybe 10 times at Open World since then. In 2009, I kind of hurt my back pretty bad, and that put me at the wayside for a few years. And then I came back. I started getting back in 2012 when Raw was starting to come out. So I kind of used Raw to build back up to decent numbers before getting back into gear. And then in 2015, I set my best total for quite a few years. I totaled 1,003, and I was the second person in Canada to hit that 1,000 kilo total. In modern times, there's an old time lifter who had done it back in the early 80s, I want to say. But he had hit 1,000 exactly, I think. And if I could think of his name, I'll spit it out there. But yeah, so 2003 I hit in 2015, and then I had a few years of back issues again. And then last year, 2019, I beat that again with 1017 at Worlds, and then just this year at Nationals, I really jumped ahead at 1067.5. So it's kind of a bit of a quick rundown of the highlights.
Sweet. So 10 Open Worlds, hey?
I think so. 2008, we skipped 2009, skipped 2010. I think that was India and South Africa.
Okay.
2011, we went to juniors. We hosted juniors that year, sorry. And then went to Pilsen for Open. So 2008, 2011, 12... We did 12 in Puerto Rico, 13 in Norway, 14 in Denver, 15 I think was in Luxembourg, and we skipped it.
Orlando? Oh no, 16 was Orlando, right?
Yeah, 15 was Luxembourg, we skipped it. 16 was Orlando, 17 in
Pilsen.
Pilsen again, of course. Yeah. 18 in Sweden, which I didn't lift at, but I attended and helped coach Rhea and stuff. And then 19 last year in Dubai. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So you've been around, seen some things.
I've been around a few years. Yeah. Yeah.
What are some of like your favorite or some of the craziest things you've seen at an open worlds competition? Because I imagine that's there's probably some pretty interesting stories in there somewhere.
Like besides seeing incredible lifting, like, seeing Carl Ingar Christensen, who lots of people won't even know at this point, maybe, in 2014 Denver, where he totaled the world record. He squat, I want to say 492.5, but it might have been 490. And everyone kind of wanted him to go 500, or everyone expected him to, but I think the bar whip he couldn't control it well enough, so they went 492.5. And so watching him lift that year was pretty amazing. He was definitely at the top of his game at that point. And then that was basically the end of his career. I don't know if he really competed much after that. But seeing some of the crazy bombs throughout the years has always been interesting. 2014 in Denver, Joe Capolino, who went through 3 bench shirts trying to get a bench in. Actually 4, I think, because he blew his shirt on his opener, put a backup shirt on that had a hole in the shoulder. So he went out for a second, couldn't touch, and they came back and said he couldn't wear that shirt because it had a hole in it. So he ran over to the Titan table and he'd been wearing a Inzer Bolt, and that was his backup shirt too. They ran over to the Titan table, grabbed a katana, or it's like a super katana, threw that on, and while they're pulling it on, they tore it. So they tore a hole in it again. So they tore that one off, and they didn't have any more katanas that fit them. So they ran over to the Inzer table and got like a Rage X, because it was the only shirt they had in the building basically that fit him. So he ran back and put that on, and he touched his third, and I want to say he got about halfway up before he had no gas left. That was probably one of the most intense attempts.
Man, that's crazy.
So, I don't know. It's always interesting going into worlds. There's always such crazy lifting and such, big events like that, like bomb outs that you don't expect. Like in 2008, my first year, I want to say it was 3 or 4 major bomb outs in the supers that kind of allowed me to play so high in my first year. But Brian Siders bombed out that year. Another name a lot of guys won't know this around anymore, but he was the total world record holder he probably held it for a long time. Actually, I might guess his might even be a retired record when they changed the weight classes.
Potentially.
I don't know if anyone actually beat his record before they changed it in 2011. So
yeah, that's cool. I think that kind of epitomizes what I love and what I sort of like was drawn to with equipped lifting, and that's just like riding such a fine line with things to where you're pushing everything to its absolute max capacity. You're trying to get as much out of your suit, as much out of your shirt, and you see guys going that extra little bit, and this is beyond anything that I would do in a meet or am capable of doing yet. But I watched this video of Semenyenko the other day, and then how aggressively they're jacking down his shirt, and like his whole pecs are out of the collar of this low cut katana, and the sleeves are about this long because they've pulled the shirt down so far, and it's just like, I don't know, man. It's cool. It's like just revving a muscle car into the red for 9 full lifts, and it's just like, if nothing gives, it's going to be a hell of a show, and if something does give, it's probably going to be terrifying.
Yeah, it's kind of the interesting thing about and why like I still keep getting drawn back to Equipped is that it's so much more nerve-wracking, right? Like you're riding this fine line of I want to open conservatively, but if I open too conservatively, I can't touch or I can't get depth, right? So you're opening with something that probably makes you a little bit uncomfortable, so that the nerve or the weight off the shoulders that you get from after the first attempt when you get it in, like it's probably the best feeling in the world. Maybe that's why I keep chasing it.
Yeah, but that's fair.
But yeah, no, that's the thing about equipped lifting is just how much more nervous energy you carry through it, I think. And not to say that you don't get the raw, right? Because I mean, you definitely do, especially competing at high levels, which you would know more about, obviously. But yeah, it's just that's fear, I think.
Yeah, seriously. I think my first lift back to raw after competing full equipped was just like, you're kind of sitting around and you're like, okay, well, yeah, I guess I'm ready for my next squat. I'll do up my belt and I'll stand over here for a bit and I'll chalk my hands and yeah, no, I still got 30 seconds left. I'll just I'll wait and okay, bars loaded. Here we go. You know, it's just like it's a totally different thing. And I've been in that situation a few times where it's like bars loaded, you only got one knee wrapped, and it's like let's and go. Everybody's screaming, and it's just like a pit crew. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. It's a different type of lifting. There's a lot of different intensity to it, I think. So yeah, I certainly appreciate that. And that's definitely something that's drawn me into the sport in a big way.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the thing. Like you'd probably be one of the most successful raw lifters that kind of ever transitioned over to Equipped. And how did you first kind of get drawn into it? Like you placed second in 2015,
2016, yeah.
2016. Okay.
In Texas.
In Texas, that's right. I get those years kind of mixed up, but so you placed second classic, and then your first Equipped Worlds was 2017.
Yep.
So what was the transition? What kind of pulled you through to the other side?
So I think it was when I was prepping for 2016 Worlds that my hip really started acting up, and that was a big factor in my change of focus. That combined with, I think it was like April that year of 2017, maybe a little earlier, maybe February, but we held an APU coaching summit, and Shane Martin gave a presentation about equipped lifting, and he brought his now wife, Danny, right?
Yeah.
Up and like stuffed her into a suit right then and there, and and showed us like a cool slideshow with a bunch of like crazy lifts from Worlds and videos and stuff, and was just like, this is equipped lifting. Don't you guys think it's sweet? And I was just watching this, and all of a sudden the gears started turning. So I asked Shane a few questions about it afterwards. And yeah, just from there, ordered my first few pieces of equipment and was like, I'm going to do this. It looks like a lot of fun. And my first, when I first started getting into the suits and stuff, I would lift equipped, and I never got any of that same hip pain. So that to me was a big sort of persuasion towards that side of being like, okay, well, I can still push this like really hard, and my numbers are as big or slightly bigger, than they were raw. The bench shirt was the bane of my existence for a long time. Starting to come around on that a little bit. But yeah, like equipped squatting was probably the biggest thing that just made me fall in love with it. There's just so much going on and so much pressure, and the knee wraps and the straps, and if you can walk it out and stand it up, that feeling of hitting it just right out of the bottom and having some weight that's just, you never thought you'd even put that on your back, and all of a sudden you're like, pop, just like pop it back up. There's just nothing like that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. And I think squatting has always been my favorite lift. So I definitely understand the feelings you're sharing with that. And I think part for me is that squat has so many components to it with the knee wrapping timing and stuff like that. So there's so much, there's that like initial pain of getting your knees wrapped that kind of like amps you up. It's not quite ammonia, but it's kind of ammonia-ish, right? Like
it's on par with that. Yeah.
So yeah, no, I definitely understand what you're saying with that. So you found that lifting in the suit just basically got rid of your hip pain?
So I was able to lift in the suit without pain. It was still there raw, so it didn't like fix anything, but it kind of presented me a workaround. So, I didn't feel so bad if I went in and squatted 170 on my raw day, because I was squatting, 310 for reps on my equipped day. So in my head, I was still kind of able to feed the ego or whatever it is that makes you feel like you want to put more weight on the bar, that inner meathead that we all have, whatever that might be. It helped me kind of like assuage that while I dealt with my hip and really deloaded and really slowly worked my way back up, which, now it's much, much less of a problem. So I think overall, even for my raw career, I think getting into Equipped was a big thing for me.
Right. That's interesting because it's pretty similar to a story that a guest will have in the future here. Blaine Sumner has about his back and hip pain. He has issues with his labrums, I think hip labrums, and the suit kind of does a lot of the same thing for him, allowing him to squat
He's
heavy
had
without pain.
what, 5 labrum tears or something like that?
I
don't even know. Like, yeah, I think I've seen him post about them a few times. Maybe heard an interview with him at one point, but we'll ask him when we got him on here.
Yeah, for sure. It's just interesting. It's definitely like I always kind of figured that the push into Equipped from classic lifters might be more of my progress slows down classic, so I kind of want to push into Equipped as a outlet for that meathead, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting to hear it as kind of like a workaround for injuries, allowing you to also push ahead while still fixing the initial injury as well.
Yeah, I think for me it was a lot of both. Like my progress was beginning to slow, and whether that was mostly due to the hip injury or what, I didn't, hindsight's 2020. Who knows if I had gone a different route, right? But I definitely did notice, like, okay, my first session, 310 felt really hard, or whatever I ended up squatting my first session. I don't know. And then, 2-3 months later, I'm squatting 340, 350, and it feels easier. And that's a huge jump, right? And it's more just me learning to use the equipment, becoming a little bit more confident, wrapping my knees tighter, that kind of a stuff. And probably adapting in terms of the strength curve of that, being able to push through that top end a little bit better. But yeah, it was definitely like much quicker progress than I was used to. It felt good to be a bit of a novice at something again. Because with the other lifts, there's not much I'm tweaking with my technique in my raw lifts. Like it's pretty much what it is, and it's there, and it's good. Like, I don't really need to make many changes. But with the Equipped stuff, I had no idea what I was doing. So every session I was trying different stuff, and sometimes it would hit just right, and it would make a huge difference.
Yeah, I think that's part of the interest with gears, how much you can tweak and change, and you wear your suit legs a little lower one week, or you tighten the straps up a little more, or you twist the sleeves or untwist sleeves, or pull the sleeves lower, pull the chest panel down, and it's partly that makes it so interesting, especially when you try and get everything a little variable right, and then you go to a meet and you're like, well, I sure hope I get all those variables right, because otherwise I'm pretty screwed.
Yeah.
So
yeah, like the third attempt shirt change at nationals there.
Yeah, I mean, and
high risk, high reward.
Yeah, and I think it's that's a perfect example, because in the gym, I basically figured out that to make that shirt even get close to touching and working, I had to pull the sleeves up as high as I possibly could, which is not how I wear any other shirt, right? Like mostly I leave my sleeves nice and low and get a lot of sleeve pop. But with that shirt, the chest panel just that much tighter that I have to pull the sleeves up as high as I can. Otherwise, there's no way I was going to get to my chest.
Interesting. So, I mean, I guess going back into where we kind of started this whole thing, with this sort of, with this pandemic upon us right now, how has that shifted your goals or your training? Or because I know World Games has been postponed a year now. That's obviously a big thing for maybe a lot of Equipped lifters listening. So, like how have you shifted your training or even your mindset in regards to that kind of stuff?
I think with the World Games being postponed now, it's kind of an interesting thing. And the IPF hasn't really spoken out yet at this point when we're recording if they're going to change their plans for qualifications. I assume that they'll just push qualifications back a year.
You would think, yeah.
But they haven't said anything yet. So assuming that this year North Americans is no longer a qualifier, if that even happens, like North Americans scheduled for late July, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know at this point what the odds of that even happening would be. So before nationals, it was probably one of the worst preps mentally for me. I really was not into it. I was And I think a lot of it comes down to, even though I've done this for 15 years, a lot of competition anxiety. I get terrible competition anxiety. And a lot of that is to do with bombing. I don't have exactly the most stellar reputation for nationals in the past, both 2016, 2017 and 2018. Yeah,
because 2017 was my first Equipped Nationals, and I remember that.
Yeah. So 2017, I bombed in the bench at nationals. My first bomb out ever. I'd never bombed before that, besides in a bench only, at my first nationals actually. So, so bombed in 2017 in Quebec. Some unfortunate stuff happened there. I don't want to get into rehashing some bad feelings, but
open those old wounds.
And then 2018 in Calgary, I was actually having issues with my right elbow. I had some osteophyte growth in it, and I couldn't reach very good extension anymore. So I knew I had some chances about getting called for not being locked out. So 2018, I'd come in and my goal was to put a big bench, and I opened the heaviest I ever opened, and but I just didn't get a lift in that day. So I've kind of bombed 2 nationals in a row, which puts a lot of anxiety in you. And then in 2017 at World Games, I missed my first 2 squats, almost bombed. And then at Worlds that year, I missed my first 2 squats and almost bombed. So I think it's all led to a lot of anxiety. Luckily, I've kind of increased my hit rate on squats now. I think my last 3 meets, I've gotten every squat attempt I've done. So changed the way I squat. I started squatting like a high bar or like a medium to high bar position, allowing me to kind of stay more upright and kind of drive into the hole. And that seems to have helped my squat a lot. So, and then bench training was pretty terrible going into it. So it didn't help my mental state. So all that said, I was really mentally drained going to nationals, and I didn't really want to compete. I didn't want to do North Americans. So right now, if I don't have to do North Americans, because it's not going to be a qualifier in any way, then I probably won't. I think I need the time to I would like to do some raw training and kind of work on some raw strength again. Yeah. But just let some nagging injuries from all the equipped work kind of subside, hopefully. So, and then the goal will be to compete in Norway if that again happens. We did Norway in 2013. It's a beautiful country, and I'm excited to go back. So hopefully that doesn't get canceled, but kind of see. Luckily, we own a lot of equipment, so we're able to set up a gym in our garage. So we're still able to train pretty well, but at this point we're just kind of doing raw stuff to get through. I don't know about gear. I'm always nervous. I'm not I'm the kind of guy, like, I'll squat with 2 spotters that I trust. I'm okay with that. But squatting, like, once it's just me and Rhea, I don't know if I want her to spot me, right? There's little she can do, more likely just 2 people get injured if something happens. So we have some big safeties, and we can get by with that. But so it'll probably be kind of raw until we can get training in a group again, which is okay. I think it's important to take the time to work on raw stuff too. What about you?
I think I'm in the same spot. Probably try to use some of this time to fill up the weight class a little bit. I think I came in at nationals at 116, 117. So I have a little bit of growth, up to sitting a little more in like the mid 118s right now, and feeling pretty good about that. Like, feeling okay with body composition. So yeah, put on a couple more kilos, try to hammer away at the raw lifts a little bit. My raw deadlift is feeling great right now. So yeah, I mean, if I could hit some raw PRs over the next little while, even just like rep PRs or RPE, E1RM PRs, I'd be totally happy with that. Put on a few more kilos and, make my bench shirt a little tighter for the next time I get back into it.
Right.
But similar to you, I mean, competition wise, my only reason for wanting to go to North Americans was to try to qualify, right? Get that sort of extra insurance. just banking on podiuming at Worlds is tough. You can't just like, yeah, no, I'll just podium at Worlds. It's all good. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
there's
know,
a few
man.
people that can say that, but not too many can kind of
Exactly.
bank on
I don't
that.
think I'm quite there yet. So yeah, with that not happening, also really hoping to go to Norway. I know my wife Selena and I were really hoping and looking forward to that as a vacation as well as anything else. Just like going and experiencing the place and taking it all in and taking some time and touring around and doing all that kind of stuff. So hopefully that still happens, and if not, 2021 is in Ukraine, so I've wanted to go to the Ukraine for a long time. My roots are there. I don't speak the language. I don't have any clue of the culture, but I know I'm partly Ukrainian, and I know there's a hell of a lot of strong lifters from there. So I don't know.
I think the last name gives it away a little bit.
Yeah, all the chucks and skis. Yeah.
Yeah, the single vowel in 8 letters.
Yeah, this is consonant soup.
It's interesting. I've never, in all my years, there's never been a meet in Ukraine or Russia that, I guess like, was it 2013 Raw Worlds was in Russia?
That sounds about right. Yeah, that was a little before my time.
But like, never been really an opportunity to go to either of those countries, and so it's kind of interesting to see it there next year.
Yeah, I think that would be cool.
Sure.
So for you, Ryan, so you previously held the biggest total in the CPU, and then I broke that, and then
and I will say you were coaching me when you did it, and then you coached me like the next day and held me back on my deadlift.
I did not.
I definitely.
I asked you if you wanted to go for that. What was it? 337.5 you would have needed?
Maybe even a bit more. I might have need because you were 1030.
Yeah.
I think I would have needed 340. I think
340. Yeah. I asked you if you wanted to put it on the bar.
I know.
I gave you the option.
I did not.
But anyways, you've come back now from that 1017, which was, I believe, your previous biggest total, or you hit 1020 at Worlds in Dubai.
1017, yeah.
1017 was in Dubai. Okay. And then now 1065.
67.
67.5. Sorry. Yeah. At nationals, and so obviously you've been in equipment a long time. That 1017 was the highest you had pushed your PR. And previous to that, I think you said it was a number of years prior, your previous total PR, right?
Yeah.
So obviously you've seen yourself evolve as a lifter, and for somebody who has competed for as long as you have, what do you think contributed to that recent sort of surge in your performance and in your growth as a lifter? And where do you think, where did all that come from? And are you gonna just total 11 then 1200 right away, or what's going on? You got another 60 kilos in there?
I guess see if I have a smaller bench shirt to squeeze into for my third attempt. that was a big part of it.
Yeah.
I think it was about a 30 kilo meet PR in the bench. I had done 325 in training right before my elbow surgery in 2018. But the most I ever done on the platform was 300. So, doing a nice YOLO third attempt bench that I needed to make to kind of stay competitive with Eric, obviously.
Yeah.
Eric pushing me to actually try really hard helped. So, I think good consistent training, though. I think working with Mike Tashir now for almost close to a year. I started working with him kind of initially to kind of learn the system he uses, and it just kind of felt really good. I do significantly less work than I used to do in a program, but it seems to work for me. Mm-hmm. So maybe that says something about my work capacity. I don't know, or maybe it's my age, maybe one or the other. Being 38 now, so I think Mike's been a really good fit in that regard. So it's kind of allowed me to not beat myself up as much throughout the week, so I can come into my main sessions, my competition sessions a little fresher, and that's kind of allowed me to push things a little harder. Deadlift is coming back. My best deadlift ever was 338 in 2015 when I set that first 1,000 kilo total.
Yeah.
And then I had a big hip injury that nagged me for a number of years, really until my elbow surgery in 2018. And then I stopped doing sumo for almost a year there and just pulled conventional, try and give it some time to recover. I don't know if I have a hip labrum issue or what it was. I could never really track anything down. No one gave me any good ideas. So I just pulled conventional for almost a year, and that seems to have helped it. So I can now pull sumo again without pain, and I'm now getting back to close to pulling a PR deadlift. So I'll be excited when I can finally do that again.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of been all three lifts are kind of doing good at once, which is not always the case, and especially in equipment, it seems. So I think looking at my numbers, I only did 2 squats at nationals, which was a strategic move, knowing that with 2 small flights, I think we had like 7 and 8.
Yeah. By the time bench rolled around, I think we had even less. Or by the time deadlift rolled around, we had 5.
Yeah, you guys had some bombs. Yeah, exactly. So, but to follow myself 7 minutes later in squats, or even less, I don't even know how long the actual time frame was, but I came off of my second one and I said, like, I'm done. Like, I was so tired. I didn't have anything left in me, and I just wanted to get out of the suit and start warming for bench. But so I think there's more there on squat. So I don't want to say I'll total 1,100. Like, that'd be a lifetime goal for sure.
Yeah.
But we can hope.
Sweet.
I'm next year. I turned 39 this year, so next year I turn 40, and I'm a Master 1, which is exciting for me because I don't have to compete with young guys anymore. But also exciting because the Master 1 total world record is 10:62 and a half. So, if I can just hold my peak now, I will. I can go after that next year. And actually, next year, Master 1 Worlds are actually in Newfoundland, where I did my first world. So it's kind of interesting.
Wow. Yeah.
Rhyming, as they might say. So I'm kind of excited for next year. Not that I'm looking past this year, but it's interesting to have next year coming up, and hopefully maybe put a big total in a Master 1 category. Yeah,
that'd be awesome. I'd like to see the 1,100 fall, man. Nobody in Canada has done 1,100 yet, right?
No, and now it's a 3-dog race to see who gets there first, I guess. The last time there was a 1,000 kilo total race was me and Alex Bardell in 2008, 2009. Okay. And then I hurt myself and he beat me to it. So
okay.
I don't know. Maybe I can win this one, but we'll see. You two gain strength way too fast.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how it all goes.
Speaking about nationals, you hit what would be, I assume, a very big milestone for you, 400 kilo deadlift, which I know you've been chasing for a number of years. Yeah. And you also did a 400 kilo squat, which is, pretty crazy. You see a lot of good deadlifters that oftentimes that's all they are good for, right? So to do a 400 and a 400 and meet together is pretty rarefied. I think we had chatted on Instagram about this. There might have been 2 or 3 other people in the IPF to ever have done such a thing.
Yeah, I think it depends on this, like what kind of search you use, whether it's like all drug tested federations. Because if it's all drug tested federations, I think there's like 7 or 8. And if it's just the IPF, I think it's like 5-ish, I want to say, who've done it before. So
I guess how do you feel? How do you feel coming off the nationals with those big milestones?
Pretty damn good, man. I never thought that I would squat 400 before I would bench 400. I mean, just chronologically, that's kind of how
bench
it worked out. Deadlift 400. I don't think I'll ever bench 400. Yeah, so would I. Yeah, like I honestly never thought that my squat would kind of take off to that level. Even in the equipment, I just didn't really. I hadn't been gunning for 400 necessarily. It just got to a point where I was like, yeah, it's there. Like I'm going to squat 400 soon, just because of how training was going and how things were feeling. But the 400 deadlift was, I chased that one for a long time and was close a couple of times and probably had it in me a couple of times and didn't load it. like maybe even Worlds 2017.
Right.
It might have been there. I pulled 390 or 391 very handily, and then just set it down before they allowed me to set it down. So yeah, it's yeah, that was a big deal for me. Like that was something that I chased for a long time and put a lot of stock in and put a lot of energy and thought and nervous energy into, heading into the meet. But it was one of those things, by the time my second deadlift hit the floor, I knew that it was happening that day. I didn't sit down between attempts because number one, there were 4 lifters in our flight or whatever, but number 2, I was amped. I was standing there bouncing off the walls the whole time because I knew that it was going to go that day. Right. So yeah, it was pretty cool. I feel good.
So with that monkey off your back, having chased it for a couple of years now, like, do you think your deadlift will just kind of soar now? Like, you think you've been kind of mentally limited by that artificial wall?
I think a little bit. Yeah. I think that I don't know if I'd use the word soar, but I think there's more in there. I think with how my raw deadlift is going right now, I think that I'm like getting more and more used to being the size that I am now. And I think it's actually a benefit. I think it's actually a big benefit in terms of just overall strength, being stronger. I had to adapt some things in my technique with not being able to get into the same position I maybe once did. And sort of maybe figure out a bit of a different way to train. I think a little bit of a lower deadlift frequency, a little bit of a lower average intensity, I think are things that help me with my deadlift right now and things that have helped my deadlift start moving again. But yeah, I mean, obviously the next big thing is that 420 that Christoph pulled, right? 420.5 is a number that I've been thinking about, and maybe even 425 or whatever, but that's that's the biggest deadlift in the IPF as far as I know. And it's the world record in my weight class. So it would be cool to hit one of those or to hit another one of those, I guess. But yeah.
So kind of circling back to the weight gain, and do you think that was a big factor with your squats?
Oh yeah. Big time.
Because your best squat at 105 was 367. Is that right?
That sounds about right. Maybe 372.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe 370. No. Yeah. Anyways, they're within 5 kilos of each other. It was somewhere in there. Right. Yeah. So gaining weight, definitely both my raw and equipped squat feel infinitely better. Just bigger, a little bit more bounce off of in the bottom. Feel a little more stable under the bar. I think that's something that a lot of people experience, right? Is gaining weight is typically something that will help your squat.
Right.
Yeah.
And not usually your deadlift, but it hasn't seemed to have hindered your deadlift quite as much.
Yeah, then that was I guess a big concern when I first moved up and was like, especially in my suit, because my suits weren't fitting quite right, and I wasn't sure, how I wanted to wear my suit. I had only ever used one deadlift suit for like the entirety of my deadlifting career, and then moving up, I got a custom suit and then another custom suit and one with longer legs and one with shorter legs and tighter straps and looser straps, and tried out all this stuff and was kind of just like a bit of analysis paralysis trying to figure out what I needed. And it took a lot of thinking and a lot of, like what did it feel like when my deadlift worked and what were the things that I focused on? And it's not that different. I kind of went back to some of those same things that I was doing back then. They are maybe executed a little differently now, but the intent in terms of like the technique and the suit seemed to be very similar to what I was doing back then. So I was just getting back to what I had been doing previously with my deadlift. Yeah.
Right. Cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know that I think you probably more approached me about the idea, or you kind of like had the idea, or were it was your brainchild. So what made you think that, okay, like we should do an equipped lifting podcast, or like what, was there something or like an experience or something that you heard or an interview that made you think like, what would be good, or like what is missing? Was there an experience like that kind of led you here, or what?
Yeah, I actually heard you on a podcast, I think, and I can't remember. It was I can't remember whose podcast it was. Was it Omar and was it Iron Culture? I think it might have been
Okay.
you and
Yeah.
Natalie and
And Mike.
Mike. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you had a discussion about equipped powerlifting, and
Yeah.
I was like, man, like I really enjoyed listening to this. So I think we need more of this. I think there's such a history, and I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about equipped lifting.
Mhm.
And I think getting more information out there would be good. And beyond that, there's just a lot of really good equipped lifters in the IPF and in other federations, obviously, as well.
Yeah.
But just looking inside of our playground, there's a lot of lifters that don't get, I would say, the mainstream requests to get their name out there because they're not in the classic realm, right? Which is fine. I understand classic has a wide base of support, and that's great. But there's a lot of lifters that I wanted to kind of get a chance to sit down and talk equipped lifting with, and so I thought this might be an interesting outlet.
Cool. Yeah. And I think for myself, it's almost like a little bit of a foil to that in terms of, I think there's a lot of excitement in where equipped lifting is heading now. For me, as somebody who's recently transitioned over into equipped lifting, and starting to learn a lot about the sort of the storied history and a lot of the things that have come before, but also seeing there's a number of junior lifters in equipment, or a number more than there have been over the last few years, I think it's safe to say. So to see that interest now starting to grow again, and maybe it'll never surpass raw. I mean, I don't really care, but I think the fact that there is a growing interest and there are people who are starting to do this and fall in love with it for the same reasons you and I once did. I think that it's cool to try to explore that and figure out what people's motivations are. Because I think a lot of times when you hear that, it maybe makes it more relatable and makes, that person who's on the fence maybe take the plunge. So
right.
I guess that's part of my hope with it.
Yeah. And that's one thing I don't want this ever be a classic or raw versus equipped lifting. It's not,
Agreed.
That's not my goal. I think the goal is just to chat about equipped and get more information about it out there.
Yeah.
And just help to promote people to give it a try and not dismiss it as, something that's totally different or, cheating or whatever you want to say, right? I hate the analogy. Like, I think you said something earlier about like stock cars or something like that when you're talking about running, high octane race fuel or something for equipped lifting, and I think that's a really good way to look at it, right? You can put any person can sit in a car with 1,000 horsepower, and they can grab the steering wheel and hit the gas pedal and see what happens.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the experience, you don't have the skills, then it's probably not going to go very well.
Yeah.
Not speaking from any kind of experience, but it's the same thing with anyone could throw on a tight suit or a tight shirt, and there's this big belief out there that you just throw a tight shirt on, you can do whatever you want. Yeah. And I think the learning you've gone through recently and that I'm still going through is that there's such a skill component to it all that which is so much of the interest to it, right? That tweaking and learning, and if I tuck my elbows or I think about this or I cue this, it's it's so interesting in that way.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, we're gonna wrap that episode there. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks for listening. I hope it was interesting to you. Going forward, our plan is to release a new episode every 2 weeks and to feature a guest on each episode. If you have any questions for us or topics you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at equippedbruisedtired@gmail.com. Or if you have an idea for a guest you'd like us to bring on, send us an email or leave a comment below. And we'll do our best to fulfill all the questions and requests going forward. So thanks for tuning in and listening, and we'll see you guys in the next one.